Holy smokes, talk about cutting it down to the wire. I literally just finished setting all of this stuff up so that we could actually do the stream tonight. Oh.
And it's coming through, too.
That's good. I really need to plan ahead better on these streams because this is just no good.
Yeah, well, when you got so much stuff going on during the day, it's easy to lose track of time.
All right, so it appears we have an audio echo issue. Hold on a sec. I'm trying to clean that up right now. Let me know if the echo is better now. I thought I fixed that too.
Are we better now? Can you hear me now?
Should have been good.
How strange.
Hello, hello, hello. No, son of a biscuit.
Is it both of us or just Spyros? Or just me?
Echo still.
I'm fine. Not you.
Why am I echoing?
You got a mic on or something? Or a speaker not muted or something?
I have no idea.
Funny thing is I hear myself as an echo, so now I figure for sure it was me.
Check, check. How's that? Echo good, echo bad, echo, echo. Okay, let me know how that sounds. Better?
Oh, better. There we go.
Okay. All right. I don't know what the heck happened there. That's what happens when you set everything up at the last second. So, hello.
Well, that being said, still, you wouldn't have known the echo was there until he started streaming anyways, so.
Yeah, good point. Don't save. Well, I'll come to that. All right, hello. Who's here? We got, hey, I am me. Steve is here. Mark is here. Robin Palmer. Hello, Robin. Are you? Robin, I don't remember seeing you in the chat before.
Yeah, I was going to say, the name's not familiar.
Yeah, welcome. I Love is here. Tim is here. Peter's here. Steve is here. Hello, everybody. Sandy's here. Classic Mama. Jim.
First time for Robin.
Awesome. Nice. Well, welcome to the show, Robin. Good to have you here. That's awesome. Leroy is here. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, L. Sullivan. How's it going? Okay. I'm going to make a slight adjustment to my camera here. You guys can see. Hello, Adam Alvarez. How's it going? And George Fernandez. Hello, George. What's up? Okay, this is it.
He had to reboot too.
Jim had to reboot. This is it. It's official. Welcome to Photo Blab. Tonight we're talking about preparing your images and printing them. And this is a topic that I think everybody should be interested in because we're all photographers and we should all be printing our images. I am the first to admit that I'm bad at that. So
I'm not bad.
Shame on me.
I would like to do more though.
You would like to do more. Greyhound Rick, hello and welcome. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But before we do that, we always like to check in with what we've been up to, and we want to know what you guys have been up to. So let us know in the chat, what have you been up to this week? What's your week in photography been like? And while we're waiting for you guys to pop that into the chat, we'll share our weeks. And Mark, if you want to start, go ahead.
Sure. So I actually never had anything planned, but yesterday I got a text. Well, actually, I saw one of the local groups that I'm in that a model was planning to do a spontaneous last-minute shoot. So I sent her a message. I happened to be going into town, and so we hooked up, and we shot for about half an hour. We didn't really shoot all that long. It was still quite chilly. And we were down near the waterfront, so it made it even chillier.
Lake effect.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to show them the shot that you got?
Yeah, I can do that.
All righty, I'm going to switch it over.
Show a couple of
them. I love says to Greyhound Rick, you walk in those dogs, the buses. Hey, IME says, I worked up the nerve to send you a photo for critique, which is awesome. I have to check into all of those photos that have been sent in, but I am going to be bringing back the critiques. We're probably going to have to do another critique show again here sometime soon. So here's Mark's photo. Mark, go ahead and tell them a little bit about it.
Yeah, so basically this model, she also does some makeup, so the main purpose was just kind of show off this new look that she has tried. Let me get a headshot here. You can have a better look at the makeup.
Mm-hmm.
Not that one. Which one? This one should show pretty good.
Oh, wow. You got a lot of ice on that water yet.
Yeah. So you can see there what she's done.
So did she do the makeup?
Yep, she did it herself.
Cool.
She did sparkles and the whole 9 yards. So
yeah, that looks really fantastic.
yeah, she says she hasn't even been dabbling in the makeup all that long. I think she said October or September is when she started doing it.
Oh wow, that's great. That's really
she's
great.
really enjoying it.
Yeah, no kidding. That's still something I want to do.
Yeah, we got some great shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, the waterfront, so we used the boat.
Okay.
And they're doing some construction, so
sparkly construction.
Yeah, sparkly construction.
Very cool. Very cool.
So that was basically, for the most part, what I've done this week, photography related wise.
Okay. Very nice. All right. I haven't been up to much. Mostly trying to do a little bit here to get the studio ready, but not much work went on this week just because of other stuff that was going on. So you can't see it, but back over there, I did bring a couple of things here. So first of all, I have my backdrop system now here in the studio. It's just not set up. It's literally laying on the floor back over there. I also got my some more acoustic foam so I can do some acoustic treatments in the studio to try to cut down the little bit of sound and echo that I'm getting in here so that I can just get some better quality sound. So like that's about all I've done. I haven't edited anything. I was hoping to start live editing this week, but obviously that didn't happen.
The week's not over yet.
Yeah, well, and tomorrow I'm not going to be because tomorrow I'm going to be over at the old house prepping that, doing some more work to prep that for sale. So that's the kind of thing that that I've been working on. So like I was patching and taking nails out of the wall and restoring. Well, not restoring yet, but you know, just we got to get that house ready to sell. So that's what I've been working on.
For the most part, you got everything out of there now?
No, I mean, yes, but no. There's still crap over there that we got to deal with. Like the garage still has stuff. Like there's still some stuff in the basement. My winemaking stuff. You know, miscellaneous things like that. All the major stuff is out, but there's still stuff there that we got to deal with. So
right, that's good.
So that's what I've been up to. Let's see what you guys have been up to. Let me just back up the chat a little bit so I can see what you guys have been doing. Jim Tinker said, nothing photographic, just building wicking beds. What's a wicking bed? I mean, I understand the idea of wicking, like wicking water away from something. Is that for, like, gardening? That sounds pretty interesting, whatever it is. Steve says, I got into a Celtic Steampunk Festival shoot for this Saturday. That's nice. Cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
I sent a message to the event coordinator and just asked to shoot it. They have a paid person already, but they said, yeah, come on down. That's really cool. Yep. Taking the gear to have some fun. Who knows what will follow? You never know. Absolutely right. That's really cool. That's a great way to get some experience and shoot some stuff. Yep, network, exactly. And some, you know, you'll hear photographers particularly who will say, like, you should never do that kind of thing for free. And we've talked about this before, but it's absolutely something that's worth doing free if it's something you want to do. And that's always the key to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Peter says, besides some dull on-the-road shots that I took in order to show a genealogy group consisting of descendants of Swedes what the Swedish winter-ish rural areas look like, it's been slow and dull. I love Greyhound says, we're adopting out the dogs. And Steve said, organized all of my gear, as some of you have probably seen. It's so much nicer. I did see some of those photos, which is really cool. Yeah, it is really good to have your stuff organized. I'm not quite there yet, but even so, I've still got an organization system going. And, you know, you can see the shelves lit up behind me back there. And then these shelves over here that have all my little shoebox totes with all the miscellany that I have. So it's coming together. Organization is really important. I love says hooch. Yeah, I basically make hooch. Peter said, I did get that camera I mentioned. For those who don't know, I'm planning on restoring and customizing a beat-up old TLR camera. A TLR, if you're not familiar too, by the way, is twin lens reflex. That's one of those cameras that has the two lenses on the front that you look down at the top to compose your image. And so the first lens is your viewfinder lens, and then the second lens is actually the image capturing lens. And those are pretty cool cameras. I've never, I have a small one But I haven't shot with it yet. It's something I want to. But the finder on it is really, really hard to see in. The ground glass is pretty bad. So when I try focusing with it, I literally can't even tell if I have focus. So I don't know if I'll ever end up shooting with it because of that. So I don't know. But it's still cool to have.
Yeah, I wonder if it's an oddball film size in that camera, or if it...
I think it's just straight 120, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah. Hello to Tom, who's joining us. Sandy says, just bought the M50 and picked up the adapter for the EF lenses. That's awesome. How do you like it so far? Let us know what you think of it. I actually just recommended the M50 for my... She's not actually my sister-in-law because she's not married to my brother yet, but they've been together for quite a while, and they're going to get married. So for all intents and purposes, she's my sister-in-law.
Are you shooting the wedding?
I just... God, I hope they don't ask. Only because if they do, I'll say yes.
Yeah.
But I really don't want to. I don't know if I'll say. Anyway,
the truth be told, right?
I recommended the M50 because she wants to start making YouTube videos, and she also wants to do some food photography, and she wanted something relatively small and light, so mirrorless wise, and she also wanted something Canon. And so I recommended her the M50, which I think is a really nice solution.
I think they're supposed to be pretty good for vlogging too, aren't they?
Yeah, it is, because they finally, I don't know why it took them so damn long, but Canon finally put a fully articulating screen on one of their mirrorless cameras instead of the stupid flip up, or in my opinion, practically worthless, partially articulating screens that they put on some of these cameras. So, yeah. Hey, Ian, how's it going? He's on spring break. I'm going to be up this weekend, so we'll probably see you, Ian, at Easter over at Amber's. Ooh, I gotta make sure my other computer doesn't shut down and screw everything up here. Alrighty. Greyhound says, I'm trying to talk my wife into letting me buy the D850. Well, if you want any help with that, Greyhound Rick, let us know. Mark and I will wingman you on that.
Yeah. Anything for a new camera.
Right. Hey, Dave, you made it. How's it going, Dave?
Hey, Dave.
Dave watched his granddaughter being born and wrapped up a light painting project, which is awesome. Yeah, which is really, really cool. I saw some pictures of his granddaughter, and she is super cute, super adorable. That's really awesome. And if you guys aren't already, you should follow Live Dave. Subscribe to Live Dave here on YouTube. I'm going to be on his show next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Time, if I remember the time correctly. Is that right, Dave? That would be 6 p.m. Your time? And either way, I'm going to be on Dave's show next Wednesday, so you should definitely join us on his channel for that.
Nice. Do you know what the topic is?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the gear that we shoot with. Because, you guys know, I will mention it, but I don't often go deep into the stuff I shoot with and why I shoot with it. So it'll be a fun topic. I'm excited for that, because as much as we say the gear doesn't matter, it's fun to talk about the gear sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Jim says the wicking bed is a raised bed that has its own water reservoir and uses up to 75% less water than a dirt garden. Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting.
So it was a bed like a flower bed, not a bed like you sleep in.
Right. I figured it had something to do with gardening, but I didn't really know.
Right.
I don't garden. I can keep plants alive. We have plants in the house. I actually want to have some plants here in the studio too. Not too many because of everything else I'll be doing. But yeah, Mr. Noodle says I've got a new man cave going on. This is it.
Oh.
And Tom says, I was shooting show jumping today. I love horses. That's fantastic. I've never shot horses, but I bet you it's pretty fun. Let's see.
I shot once a horse race. Wasn't jumping.
Okay.
I basically at the local racetrack, and I contacted the coordinator. And this was quite a few years ago when I was first getting started into it again, and basically asked if I could come shoot some pictures, and they said, yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've never shot horses, racing or otherwise. I think that would be fun, though. I could see how, especially the jumping and stuff. The racing, I could see the racing being fun, too, but not as fun as the jumping and some of the other stuff that they would do.
I would agree.
Yeah. So Robin entered a photo into a local camera club review. That's really cool. And Luann started using Corel Aftershock Pro 3 for editing raw files. Main reason our internet here out in the country is not working with Adobe CC. That's an interesting downside to the Creative Cloud problem. The fact that you have to have some sort of regular connectivity in order to authenticate. I don't know how often that is.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you have to be connected.
You don't have to be connected all the time, no. And Dave might be able to add some insight to this because he is a certified Lightroom expert. But I know in the very beginning, when the Creative Cloud subscription plan came out, there were photographers who were having serious problems who would go on remote locations where they'd be without internet access for a week or two, and they were actually losing their access to Lightroom. So I know Lightroom updated it so that you didn't need constant access, but I know it still does have to check in some regular period of time. I just don't know what it is.
Oh, Dave's saying every 90 days.
Okay, every 90 days. So
be longer.
Yeah. So Luann, when you say that the internet doesn't work with CC, what in particular? Is it just the fact that you can't download it, or what would that be? Because once you have it downloaded, I can't see how your internet would interfere with just a ping from your computer to Adobe to say, yes, this is an authentic subscription install so that you can keep using it. So I'd be curious as to why, not that I think you have to use Adobe. If you're happy with Corel, that's great, but I'm just curious as to what particular about the internet is causing problems for you.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, let's see. Peter says I might be designing it to look a bit steampunkish. That would be pretty cool. Let's see. Some say you should import images into Lightroom as DNGs, but from my experience, I don't see any difference. Your opinions? We talked about that a little bit last week when we were talking about Lightroom. It's a horse apiece, basically. There are benefits. I don't know if you can say there's drawbacks to using DNG, but in my opinion, either way is fine.
I would agree.
You don't lose or gain anything in terms of image quality between your DNG file and your native camera raw file.
Yeah, I think if you're shooting, whatever camera you happen to be using, if you're importing and converting versus using the native raw, I think it would take a lot longer because it has to convert everything. Right.
And one thing that we didn't talk about last week, but that piggybacks on one of the things that Dave was saying last week, and that when he performs a copy action, it's always a copy and not a move, so that there isn't a corruption of data in the files. I'm sure it's not a thing that happens often because having things get garbled in a move or a conversion or whatnot is always a possibility no matter what, but generally is a rarity. It is possible that in converting a raw file to a DNG, you could get some corruption, but you're not going to lose anything because your original raw file is still there. You've just also created this secondary file that's a DNG conversion of that same file.
Yeah, as long as you copy.
Right. Well, I mean, as long as you don't delete your original RAWs, because converting to DNG isn't going to delete your original RAW files. It's just going to take them and create this new DNG. But so my opinion, I mean, I personally do not convert, but I don't see a problem with converting. My feeling is that, partly because of the thing you just said, Mark, the time, partly because I don't particularly see a need to convert just because I already have a raw file. Why would I convert it to a different sort of file? I know Adobe wants you to use the DNG because, generally speaking,
it's their format.
It's their format. It's easier for them to support, but they also, by default, are going to continue to support native raw files from third-party manufacturers because we're not going to use their software if they don't support our raw files. It's just not going to happen. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So honestly, to me, I would say it almost makes no difference. But Dave, again, maybe if you want to chime into the chat, if you haven't already, I know I'm behind, and just let us know if you have an opinion as to whether or not you think there's a benefit to DNG versus just keeping your native RAW file. Alrighty, let's see. Adam says, I have Epson Stylus Photo R1900 that I would like to learn how to use. All right, we are going to get into that very shortly, as soon as we get caught up here on the chat. Peter says, you shouldn't. Sometimes you've got to stop and pet the whale. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure. I lost myself in the conversation, but at any rate, yeah, it's 6 o'clock for our show, for the show, Dave's show next week, which is great. Tom says, a funny thing happened to me today. A little beetle ran across my viewfinder from east to west and back again. First time it ever happened. I thought I forgot to take my meds. That's pretty hilarious. Let's see. Steve says, that's what's good about here, that we leave out the buy this, buy that, which, yeah, I mean, you know, it certainly can be helpful to buy particular types of gear, but you guys know we're about using the gear to create beautiful images, not just acquiring gear for the sake of acquiring it.
We don't?
Oh, cool. Ian says after watching this show, he's going to be shooting a new video, which is awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. Alrighty. Let's see. Nef works just fine. It does technically have the most data available. We're just talking about the raw here, just trying to get caught up here. Let's say it's every 90 days, Dave said. You caught that. Oh yeah, a group of local professional photographers open an exhibit Saturday. I went to that. There were some really cool shots there, Peter says. That's really cool.
It's always nice to check out the other photographers' work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's there, even get to know them too.
Yeah. So Peter says, as we'll be talking prepping for print, I'd like to make a point. When editing the shot, make sure to crop it to something you can actually find a frame for. Yes, that's one of the things we'll be talking about, is the aspect ratios. Editing in another program and creating a TIFF file pretty much does the same, in my opinion. Not sure exactly what you're referring to there, but if you're responding, Steve, to what Peter said, it does, as long as you actually do that crop. But I know I'm kind of losing. Oh, so Dave says the DNG file is smaller and does hold the metadata inside the file. That's right, we were talking about this last week. Whereas your RAW file cannot hold the metadata, certain sets of metadata inside of it. So like the metadata that comes from your camera is embedded into your camera manufacturer's RAW file. But when you make edits and changes in Lightroom, those changes are saved to the database, and they can also be written to what's called a sidecar file, which is a text file that is associated with your RAW file and contains that information. But with, with the DNG file, Lightroom is able to write all of that information into the DNG file, which eliminates that secondary text file.
Yeah.
So there is that benefit, which I had forgotten about.
Yeah, the nice thing with the sidecar file is if Lightroom happens to go for a complete crap on you and you lose your catalog and everything, then when you reinstall Lightroom, the sidecar still has the settings that you that you made the changes.
Right, right. Mr. Noodle says, is Dave a new feature now? I mean, we like having Dave around, so.
Absolutely.
All right, let me see what we got here. When I ordered canvas prints, they wanted JPEGs. Why not RAW? So that's a good question, Mike. And let me just see what else we got here in the chat. Robin says, this is super cool. Got us Canon 6D for free. First full frame. Haven't had a chance to try it out, but excited to see the difference from APS-C from crop. That's awesome. That is super cool that you got that for free. And that the 6D is a great camera, too, so I think you're going to love it. Okay, let's start talking about this printing thing. So let us know if you have any questions. Pop them in the chat. Those are always welcome. I know we had some on Facebook, so I do want to bring those up. I just need to find the posts, and then we can answer the questions that you already put into the chat. So we'll start with that question that Mike just asked. Which is they wanted the canvas print. Why not just send the RAW file? And do you want to take that, Mark? You want me to take it?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay,
So,
go for it.
but basically, the raw file is unedited. So if you adjust, adding contrast, adjusting your exposure, dodging, burning, etc., and so on, it's not really in the raw file. So therefore, that's why they want the JPEG, because everything gets embedded into the JPEG. And a lot of places will take TIFFs as well. TIFFs typically will have more information. So I think if you're printing larger, then probably TIFF is a better option.
Right.
So that's sort of the short and sweet of it, anyways.
Right, and the fact that a raw file isn't technically an image file.
Right.
Your JPEG or TIFF or whatnot, those are image files. And generally speaking, those print services want JPEGs or TIFFs. And so, like Mark said, sending a raw files is literally sending an unedited, it's just basically giving it to them and saying make a print out of this when you've done nothing at all to that image.
Right, you'd end up with if they did take the raw file, basically you just end up with a flat image with no contrast, no corrections, or anything like that.
Right, and even if you had edited that image in, say, Lightroom, if you just send them the raw file, they're not going to have those edits unless it's a DNG and they're also using Lightroom. Then it's a possibility. But either way, basically, the reason they want the JPEG is because the JPEG is an image file they can print from using their lab workflow. And that's just the standard way it's done. It's not that they couldn't generate a print from your raw file, but they would have to do extra work that they're not necessarily interested in doing.
Right.
Yeah, because they want you to edit your file and look the way you want it to look, and then send them that, which would be that JPEG or TIFF.
Right. You know how you want it to look versus they don't know how you want it to look.
Right. Right. So one of the most important things that we need to talk about with printing is what I think Peter mentioned earlier, which is make sure before you even get ready to send out that file for print that you know the size that you're aiming to print for. And the reason this is important is because you might think you can just take your image and shoot it off and print it. And say you take an image with any camera, take your pick, whatever. It's a Canon 6D, we'll just grab that because that's Robin's camera. And then you want to print an 8x10. And you say, okay, print an 8x10 from this. It's not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work, I'm going to switch over so that you guys can see my screen here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me just open Lightroom here and come back over here and do the switch. The reason it's not going to work is because, generally speaking, cameras shoot in an aspect ratio of 3:2, which means proportionally speaking, there are 3 units on the long edge of measurement, whatever that measurement happens to be, and 2 units on the short edge. So let me get over to an image that will fit that mold. We'll just grab something that I've already edited. Let me drop down.
So your Micro Four Thirds, you probably won't have that ratio.
I do have 3:2 on a Micro Four Thirds. Okay, we'll just grab something here from Trish as an example. Okay, so here's this image right here. Okay, and
turn your screen on.
Oh yeah, sorry guys. There we go. Okay, so here's an image right here. And this is the original aspect ratio of the image, okay? Now, over here in Lightroom, this is the easiest way to do this before you get ready for printing. Over here in Lightroom, if you open your crop tool, which you can do by clicking on this little crop icon right here, or using the R key on your keyboard to open and or close it, you can open up the crop tool. And you can see here there's an aspect ratio option. And right now I'm at original, but you see all these other different aspects down here. And this is where you will see and be able to crop your image to fit the print size that you might want to print for. If it's a standard size, you can enter a custom ratio if it's not here. So the example I was talking about is an 8x10 because this is a common print size that people want to print. And I actually get this question quite often. You know, how come when I send my photos out for print, they come back and they're all chopped up? The heads are chopped off, or this is chopped off, or that's chopped off. Well, that's because you sent an image that is actually 8 inches by 12 inches to a printer and asked them to print an 8x10. And because you didn't specify anything, they literally just ran it through their machine and it just lopped off the parts that it needed to lop off. So when I click this here and choose 4x5, which is 8x10, the 4x5 aspect ratio, which translates to an 8x10 print, you see my crop lines drop from the top and bottom, showing me now the area that would be printed if I chose to print this as an 8x10. And because it's me looking at this and making this decision and not just sending my full image to the printer like that, I can actually say, well, maybe I don't want the crop right here. Maybe I want to move the image down a little bit so that her foot's near the bottom of the frame, but I'm not cutting off quite so much of the top of this picture frame here. Or maybe I want to be more aggressive, right? And I want to come in super, super tight or whatever it might be. But in doing this now, I can get an actual preview, and if I hit enter, you can see, like, this is what my 8x10 image would look like printed, okay? And if I go back in here, let's say I wanted to print a 4x6 image. Well, that's a 2:3 ratio. That's actually exactly what we started with. So if I go there, you can see it shrunk it down, but if I expand this back out, it's going to fill my image back up because 3:2 translates directly to a 4x6 print. So knowing the aspect ratio of your image is important. And by default, almost every camera shoots in 3:2, although some cameras allow you to change the aspect ratio that you are capturing your image in. However, this is where things can get a little bit confusing too. Like on my camera as an example, I have a Micro Four Thirds camera, and by default, my Olympus camera came shooting and capturing images in the 3:2 aspect ratio. Give me a second here. I'm going to show this to you guys. Where is it? Here we go. Just got to throw a lens on here, grab a battery. Oh, I got a battery. Cool. Then I just need a memory card. So what I'm going to do is just take a quick photo with this camera and import it. On camera, I'm going to set the aspect ratio to 3:2. If I can remember how. No, I know how. I got to go into my super control panel. And here we go. And not only can I set it to 3:2, I can choose 16:9. I can choose 1:1, and I can choose 3:4, which doesn't make any sense. It's the same as 4:3, just reversed. Okay, so I've set my aspect ratio to 3:2, which is the standard for pretty much all APS-C DSLRs. And I'm just going to take a photograph of my camera screen here, or my computer screen here, just for the sake of it. Okay. And now I'm going to quickly import this image into Lightroom.
Hope everybody was smiling while you took your picture.
Right. All right. I got too many mice here. Too many different things. Okay, so here it is, my Lumix.
Mice. At first I was thinking you had mice in the house.
Yeah. And I just want this ORF file at the end, which is that raw file I just shot. Okay, so here's the image I just shot. This is in the 3:2 aspect ratio. But watch what happens when I enter the crop. When I enter the crop, do you see where my crop lines are? And do you see that there's extra image outside of those crop lines? That's because even though I told the camera I wanted my image captured in a 3:2 image ratio, the raw file by default captures the entirety of the image. It just comes into the into your software, Lightroom, wherever you choose, pre-cropped based on how you frame the image with your viewfinder and shot it. And the first time I realized that, I was like, oh, that's really dumb. I'm just going to use my entire frame. And I changed my aspect ratio to 4:3, which is the native of my camera, and then started capturing all of my images in 4:3. If I want to crop them to 3:2 later on, I do that. So that's why I said, even if you capture in a 3:2 ratio with your raw file, your camera should still have the extra data outside the edges.
Yeah, and one thing I like to say to photographers, that especially because of the 8x10 crop, is make sure you always leave room so you can crop, because some people, and I do it myself, I'm guilty of it, is you fill the frame too much, and then if you need to print an 8x10, then you end up in trouble because you're chopping stuff off you don't want to chop off.
Yeah, one of the things that they need to add on mirrorless cameras, or any cameras with any kind of a live view image, is crop lines. Old medium format cameras oftentimes would have these masks in your viewfinder, so you could see. When I was working for, I can't remember the fellow's name. His name was Randy. Doing pictures of kids and stuff in daycare centers and whatnot. We used medium format film cameras, and in the big viewfinder, there were literally crop lines that showed me where the 8x10s were going to be, where the 4x6s were going to be, where the wallet size crop lines were going to be. And so as long as I had my subject inside the smallest square of all the different crops, that meant that meant that you could then print the image any one of the standard sizes that were offered by this company, and you knew that you weren't going to be cutting the subject off at all. This is something that these mirrorless cameras should add, so that if you know you want to print 8x10, you could pop up an 8x10 crop line, which is kind of what's happening here, where I have the option to go 3:2, 4:3, but I don't have the option to go 8x10 or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
So we got a couple questions, and I want to answer those and then show you how to add your own custom size here in Lightroom, and then we'll move on from there. So Tom says 8x10 sucks. I agree.
Yeah.
And somebody said something about they need to change the standard print sizes because everything is 3:2 now, and we're still held back by these, old 8x10, 4x5, and other ratios.
Yeah, and the thing is like you have 4x6 is a different ratio than 5x7, which is different than 8x10.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not even like they can just pick one standard size and go with it, because right now just about every size you can print and frame is a different ratio.
Yes, and it's really, really annoying. So Mr. Noodle has a question, which is something we're definitely going to get to here, which is question 300 DPI. I think most printers work best at 300 DPI. Any other information on this? And the reason for that is that 300 DPI is accepted as the resolution necessary for a standard print to be made, so that our eyes resolve the image as the image instead of seeing the dots at a standard viewing distance. And the reason I say a standard viewing distance is because you can be, the farther away you are from an image, the lower resolution you can get away printing it, because the farther away you are, the less likely you are to be able to see the bigger dots that are creating the image. A perfect example is a billboard. You can print a billboard at something like 20 or 30 DPI, or maybe even less. I think I've even seen 6 DPI. Because you're so far away, your eyes see the image, because at that relative distance, the dots look so small that all you see is the image on the billboard and not the dots.
Yeah, I think it's just not that long ago. I think it was F-Stoppers did a video.
Did they?
Showing that.
Okay. So yeah, that's the reason for it. 300 DPI is what you want for standard prints at standard viewing distances. Artwork on a wall, in a book, things of that nature.
Yeah, I actually think Epson, I think they are 360, I think.
Oh, really?
Canon is 300, if memory serves me right.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I know, like, for as long as I can remember, it's been known to be 300 DPI.
Yeah, I think 300 is sort of what is the norm and what everybody knows, but
right.
I'm fairly sure Epson has the ability to do it a little bit higher.
Yeah, okay. That's good to know. Steve says, I printed one of my fine art tiger shots. I did, which is a darker edit, of course. I had to add so much exposure and brighten it up just to get it to look right. Regular photos only need about plus 15 brightness. Now, Steve, are you talking about the difference between the image on your screen versus the image in print and brightening it up? I think that's what you mean, but I don't want to make that assumption. Let's see. Mike says, I ordered a very large JPEG print, which I edited of Mr. Rayner. I don't recall that. Let's see. We have a question from... I'm trying to get my chat to not jump around, so I apologize for that.
Mike's asking me what size format is popular with their clients. And
with what?
With my clients.
Oh, with your clients, okay.
Yeah. And typically, I think 8x10 is what they want, just because it's not too expensive and it's not super cheap, and it's sort of a decent size. But I always try to upscale them to one size, just so it's not so much of a stupid crop.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. I part of the reason I don't like doing client works because I don't like dealing with prints and you know, this size versus that size versus this versus the other thing. It's like whatever. Okay, so George has a question. Should monitors be calibrated for proper color, brightness, and contrast before editing and printing?
Yes.
Yes, I agree. I think we both agree on that 100%.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Yeah, you should absolutely calibrate your monitor.
And
now,
if you're doing home printing, you can actually get a system that'll actually calibrate your printer to everything as well, too.
Yeah, and that can be tricky, but generally speaking, generally speaking, your printer manufacturer will provide a profile for you to use, and you also want to ensure that you're using the right profile with the right paper. Mark, you want to talk a little bit about that, because you've got the Canon, so you can give some good examples.
Right. So the Canon has its own drivers, which basically just feed the information from the computer to the printer. But then if you're using specific paper, like if you're using Hammer Mule or Red River paper or something like that, then typically the manufacturer of the paper will give you color profiles that match their paper. And so you basically go in, let me go back one step. The manufacturer will give you these profiles, but they'll also give you a recommendation as to what to set your drivers to for the particular, in my case, particular Canon paper that they want you to use that'll work with their color profile. And basically, for each different type of paper, there's a different kind of profile, and you select the right one, and you should get as close as you possibly can. But doing your own calibrating, if like for your printer, it's just helps fine tune it. If you're finding your colors are a little bit off, then you can tweak it and make your own custom profile.
Right. The other thing to be aware of is that, say you're not using Canon paper, but you're using another photo printing paper. If at all possible, when you're buying, unless you don't care that much, if you want as accurate a color as possible, you want paper that will provide you a profile. And third-party paper manufacturers good ones will make profiles for you to use on the printer. So like Mark was saying, you can go into the printer driver and you can select their Photo Plus Glossy 2, I think is one of their papers. And that tells the printer, this is the paper, this is how we need to print it to get everything to look as accurate as possible. A good paper manufacturer will provide you a profile so you can select their paper in the software driver and have it be as optimized as possible for quality, accurate print and colors.
Right.
So you're not limited to just the manufacturer paper, although of course Canon wants you to buy their paper, Epson wants you to buy their paper, etc. But that doesn't mean you can just throw any paper in there and you're going to get a great print automatically. Doesn't mean you can't use third-party paper without a profile, but you might have to do more fiddling like Mark was just talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
So definitely calibrate.
Yeah, I think even for that matter, if you have a Canon, you could use Epson paper, but again, you'd have to do a custom profile to get it to look the way you want it to look.
Right, right. Peter says, always shoot with a slightly higher focal length than you intend to use in the end. Make sure to get some of the surrounding area. That gives you room for the crop if you're intending to print. That's absolutely right. And then Mr. Noodle says, a printer said you should raise it 10 in brightness. So what I think we're getting at here is the difference between the brightness of your print and the brightness of your screen. And I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. One of my editing tips is that when preparing an image for print, and when editing in general, you should not have your monitor brightness at maximum. You should have it at 50% or even less, depending upon the monitor. Because your monitor, let me just switch over so you guys can see, your monitor is a light, I mean, it doesn't matter, but your monitor is a light emitting medium. It is bright.
Backlit.
Yeah, it is backlit. It is bright because it is actually generating light. Whereas a print on paper is an inert medium that is reflective only. And so by its nature, it's going to be darker than the image on your screen because there is no backlight and there's no light coming from that itself. We see the monitor because it is emitting light to us. Otherwise, it's just a dark screen. And so the solution I found to that was if I edit my images at a brightness of 50% or less, then when I print, they will be as bright as I expect them to be without me having to do a print and realize, oh shit, that's too dark because blah, 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 crank up the brightness on the image and then realize it looks terrible because I didn't edit that way and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I find if I'm printing, like my studio's down here in the basement, and if I print out, the lighting down here is not all that great, so it looks super duper dark. But then if I take it upstairs and bring it up to a nice big window, then it looks good.
Yes, that's super, super important thing to think about with your prints is the light under which it will be seen. Don't take a print and look at it under a shitty light bulb because it's going to look shitty. Pardon my language tonight. Because if you use like a regular Edison style light bulb, which is all orangey and tungsten and dim and whatever, when you look at that print, you're going to go, oh, that looks terrible, right? If you want to see the print natively, then you want to look at it under daylight balanced light that is, fairly bright and even so that you can enjoy and see the print for the print rather than all of the light that you might be in and the influence that has on it. The problem now with that too is you cannot guarantee how other people are going to see your print or what condition they're going to see it in if you sell a print or something like that. So you have to give away a little bit of that control when you think about selling prints or having your images being viewed in other places.
Yeah, if you're a lot of people, what they'll do is if they're hanging it on their own walls, is they'll actually get a specific light above just to actually put some light onto it, so it always looks good and consistent.
Yeah, that's something if you want to control the view is worth doing, is actually lighting the prints that you hang in your house so that they look good. All right, so Hey Amy has a question for us. Can you explain the difference between like 30 DPI and 300 DPI when it comes to printing large pictures? I watched your video on this topic, but I'm still a bit confused. So yeah, this is something that's worth going into a little bit more because I did talk about it, but we didn't really explain what DPI is and why it's important and how that really affects your image. So do you want to take this one and show them on screen, Mark? You want me to go with it?
No, you go ahead with that one. If it was your video, you'd have a better idea exactly what he's asking.
Okay, so I've got my screen up already so you can see. So I'm just going to switch back to a different, better image than a shot of my screen. And let me find Trish again because I really like that image anyway. So I'm going to open this image in Photoshop. And we're going to look at the DPI and PPI. I'm going to go with edit a copy because I don't want to mess up my original. and I'll show you what this is and what this means. So First of all, your image, whether it is printed or whether it is digital on screen, is composed of what are essentially tiny dots. On your computer screen, they are individual pixels. On your piece of paper, they are dots of ink. And the DPI or PPI, and I'm going to stop saying both of those. I'm just going to say DPI and realize that when I'm talking about the computer, we're talking about pixels. When we're talking about print, we're talking about dots of ink. DPI refers to the density of the pixels within a single inch, okay? So when I open up the image size dialog here, we're looking at my image, and it's saying here that it is 3,051 pixels on the short edge and 4,576 pixels on the long edge, okay? So for every short row, there are 3,051 pixels, and for every long row, there are 4,576 pixels. All right? Now, I want to show you something here. We're looking at the image size dialog, and right now you'll see that the resolution is 240 pixels. And that's just the native size that I never changed this Lightroom setting, that it opens up the image into in Photoshop. I'm going to change the dimension here, the width and height, the measurement unit into inches, okay? And this should help you see what's happening here and why this is so important and what it means to your image. Because when we change the resolution of our image, as long as we are not resampling, which I'm going to uncheck, and we're going to talk about resampling when we come to enlarging your image. As long as you're not resampling, all you're going to do when you change your resolution is rearrange the pixels in your image by spreading them out or compressing them on a per inch basis. So right now, I have 240 pixels for every inch of this image. And if I were to print this image on paper, that would come out as a 12.713 inch by 19.067 inch piece of paper with ink on it. The image would be that size on the paper. Now, we talked about the standard being 300 DPI for printing. So if I change my image to a resolution of 300, you'll see that the width changed to 10.17 and the height to 15.253. But look at the dimensions up at the top. It is still 3,051 pixels on the short edge and 4,576 pixels on the long edge. And that's because by changing this to 300, all I did was take more pixels and pack them into an inch. So now for every inch of the image, there are 300 pixels instead of 240. That means when I print it, there are 300 dots of ink per every inch. And like I was saying before, for standard viewing, print on a wall, pages in a book or magazine, something like that, 300 DPI is considered optimal for the human eye to resolve the image as an image, to see it as a whole, rather than for us to see the dots of ink on the paper. So now let's go the other direction. 30 pixels. When I change it to 30 pixels per inch, which means now there are only 30 dots per every inch, I suddenly have a 101.7 inch image by 152.533 inch image, right? That's big. What's 101 divided by 12? That's almost an 8.5 foot image on the short edge, right? So all we're doing when we change the resolution is changing the density of pixels in a single inch, whether it's digitally or on paper. So what does that mean, and what resolutions should you use for any particular thing, right? Here's what we'll say. Already said this earlier. If you are printing an image, as long as it's for standard viewing situations, you should choose 300 pixels per inch, unless instructed otherwise. But generally speaking, more than 300 pixels per inch is essentially wasted. I mean, I guess Epsons are 360 now, and they're deciding that that's better, which is fine. But, you know, generally speaking, 300 pixels per inch, or DPI, is perfect for printing. For web use, for sharing images on the internet, Facebook, Instagram, your website, wherever, you generally speaking want to use a resolution of 72 or 96 pixels per inch. Either or is fine. 72.
96, I think, is the new standard, isn't it?
Yeah. 72 used to be the standard resolution. 96 is the new standard resolution. It kind of doesn't matter because, you know, they're not, I mean, they're so close that it almost doesn't matter, right? If you're printing a billboard, go ahead with something like 6 pixels per inch.
Yep.
Or 30, or, you know, whatever. Because, again, because you are so far away from a billboard, you don't need that density of 300 pixels in a single inch to have the viewer resolve that image as an image and not see the dots. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I hope that answers and clarifies the importance of PPI and DPI and the resolution of your image. And what's very, very important, like I said earlier, if you only take away one thing from this, it's that when you print, you should print at 300 DPI. That is optimal. You can get away with a little more. You can even get away with a little less. Like, you could get away with 250 if you wanted to stretch it a little bit. I'd stay away from 200. That's starting to get a little bit too low resolution, I think. But optimal is 300 DPI.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. All right. So that's a mouthful of stuff that I was talking about, but I hope that clarifies that. If it doesn't, let us know if you have more questions about PPI and DPI. I want to just quickly scroll through here and see if there are any questions, and if not, then I want to switch over to Mark so he can take you through a printing workflow in Lightroom, because you can do all of your printing entirely within Lightroom. I've never even opened the Lightroom print module, so I'm no good at that. Greyhound Rick does have a question. Let me scroll that back up. Do most print shops want sRGB only, or will some accept Adobe RGB and others? Can you tell a big difference with a larger color space in prints?
I think for the most part, it's ask what your print shop wants.
Yes.
Don't assume.
Yeah, and there will be a difference with larger or different color spaces. Now, depending upon the fidelity of your own eyes, you may or may not see much of a difference between, say, sRGB or Adobe RGB. And now there's ProPhoto RGB, which is an even larger color space that you can use. So it really is like Mark said, check with your printer, see what they want, because different printers may want something different.
Yeah, and probably 90% of them probably want the sRGB.
Yeah, that's a pretty standard color space.
Yeah, and again, something else to check with your printer. If it's just like an online print shop, probably not so much. But if it's a higher end print shop where you're walking in and getting stuff, they might actually want you to use their printer profiles as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that can make a difference too. All right, so Sandy has a question. She wants to know, where do we have our prints made? That's actually a question I want to throw to you in the chat. In addition, Mark and I will share where we get our prints made. Mark, why don't you start?
I used to use WHCC, which is down the U.S., but after the exchange rate went for a dump, I ended up stopping using them and using a print shop down in Toronto. What are they called? Hold on a second. No, GTA Imaging.
Okay.
That's what they're called.
Okay. Nice.
And they do good work, and they have quite a variety of things you can choose. But but the WHCC, I never had any issues with them. Their service was good.
So in the chat we have Dave uses White House. That's what you used to use, right, Mark? That's yeah. WHCC. Luann says MPix, MPIX. I've used them in the past. Steve says at home, larger ones. I've been using Adorama Pix.
Yeah, I should say that too first. For anything 13 by 19 and smaller, I do at home.
Right, because you've got the Canon, what is it, the Pro 10?
Pro 10.
Pro 10, okay. Mr. Noodle gets them at Metro Images in London, England. Steve at Adorama Pix for the larger ones. I use a service called iprintfromhome.com. They're based out of New York, and I have used MPix in the past, but I honestly like iprintfromhome.com. I like them because they're nice people and they do a good job.
Yeah.
Hey, IME Prints at Home. There's lots of good services. What I do recommend is if you are going to order out like I prefer to do. I have a printer, but it is literally a printer that's in a drawer, one of those tiny desk like portable ones that I only pull out for printing things like Amazon return labels and stuff like that. So I don't print my own images here at home. But what I do recommend is if you are going to print, find a lab, a printer that you are comfortable with, and start by finding a few that people recommend, and order a sampling of images from each of them, and look at them and see which ones you like the best.
Yeah, a lot of the higher end print shops will actually give you like 5 8x10 prints just for free.
There we go with that damn 8x10 again.
Yeah, exactly. But basically the main purpose of it is that you can order the print, get it back, and make sure it actually matches what you're expecting to see.
Right. Yeah, that's the important thing, is making sure that it matches what you want to see. So Mr. Noodle says I often use 16:9. Tom said 300 DPI at 20 inches. My lab wants 360. And that's a case where if that's what your lab wants, then you should prepare your images that way for the lab, because there are going to be variations for the lab. Generally, 300 DPI is the standard, but it appears that we're starting to inch that upward, which I don't know if I agree with that, but what do I know, right?
You and me both.
Yeah. Hey, Eric joined us, and Peter is here too. Awesome. Okay, so good thing I did a small print check before doing the bigger ones. Yeah, that's a very good thing. See, Steve says, I sent you the shot that was hard to print. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Hey, Fabian, how's it going? How and where do you handle borders around photos? How does this fit within the size of the frames? That's a really good question. So we're going to come back to that, Fabian, but that's a really great question. I'm going to switch over to your screen, Mark, so you can walk them through a Lightroom printing workflow.
Alrighty.
All right, so we should be, whoops, wrong one. That was me. Okay, on you. So Mark's going to switch over, and he's going to walk you through printing out of Lightroom. And while that's happening, I'm going to run through the chat here and grab your questions so that we can come back and answer them after Mark is done here.
Okay, I assume my screen's on now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got this print here, which I've actually been meaning to print out, so it's quite convenient that we decided to do this print show. But anyways, it's not a color print, but nonetheless, the workflow is basically the same. With this one, my intention is to actually print this one 13:19. So if I go into the print module here, I actually had there's scroll away. There's the built-in Lightroom templates, and I actually have my own custom templates here. And in this case, I'm using the Red River paper, and I tend to put a border on. So in this case, I've got a 1-inch border. So I just like that look, having the main reason I do it is if I frame it and I get a matte, it almost looks like there's a double matte. So that's the one advantage of doing it. But like I said, custom templates. I got a few custom templates I've made myself for the different papers that I have. Other than that, just a quick going through here. So you've got margins you can set your page grid by just doing a 1x1, obviously. And the cell size is the size that you actually want to print. So because I got the 1-inch border, that's why it's showing 11:17 there. And there's options you can turn rulers on and off. Page bleed, which doesn't really affect me in this case. And basically the margins and gutters that kind of show you where everything is. And you can also turn off the image cell, which I don't know if you can see it through the the stream or not, but basically just a black border around the edge of the image. Those are literally just guides. They don't print out. So I got my resolution. I have it set to 300. Having it sent, it's being sent to the printer, but you can actually send it to a JPEG file. So that's kind of handy if you are sending it out to a printer, like a print shop versus the printer. And I usually just have standard sharpening. And the media type usually gives you an option of glossy or matte. And most of my paper is like a luster paper, so I can always keep it on glossy. So the color management, this is where you actually select your profile. So in this case, it is a Red River Satin 4.0 papers on the Canon Pro 10. So this is the profile that came from Red River. And for the intent, there's perceptual and relative, and to be honest, I'm not really sure what the difference is. I've always just used perceptual and been happy with the results. Now I'll quickly go through the printer drivers so you can see what it is set up for. So again, Canon Pro 10, paper
and
size.
This will be different, obviously, if you have, say, an Epson. The driver settings will be a little bit different, but generally the same.
And even if you
go ahead.
Right, and even if you're going from a Pro 1 or a Pro 100 or Pro 1000, they probably slightly differ as well too.
Yes.
So I normally don't worry too much about the quick setup page, but I have borderless printing turned on, but it doesn't really matter because I've got the 1-inch border. And here I have the color intensity manual adjustments checked on, and that's turned on, so it'll actually use the Red River profile. So if I go into the main here, this is basically what Red River recommends us selecting for the media type is the photo paper plus semi-gloss. And to be honest, I only use standard. You could use high, but I've not seen that much of a difference. And I find with the standard, it just uses less ink. And color intensity, again, set to the manual. And where is it? Under matching, color correction, I have set to none. And that is, if it's set to none, that means no one uses the profile that's for the paper specifically. Otherwise, it's pretty much just standard stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another note to say here as well, too, is if you are printing borderless and you're going full bleed, you actually can potentially lose a little bit of your image because in order to get full bleed, it actually has to print a little bit past the edges of the paper, and it also wastes a lot of ink. So that is something to think of when it comes to printing full page. So that's another reason I tend to put a border on.
Mm-hmm. And like, another thing to consider... Go ahead, Mark, sorry.
Okay, so even if I'm printing 11 by 14, but I want to print it out full 11 by 14, I actually print it out on 13 by 19 paper and then cut it. Okay, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that the other thing to consider with the full bleed, because it runs over your edges, you do not want to put a watermark very close to the edge because you could actually lose some of your watermark. It's not going to be terrible if a little bit of your image is cropped, unless there's something super important at the edge. But if you put a watermark at the edge and it gets cut off because of that overrun to get your full bleed image, it'll look weird because, you know, half or the bottom or whatever your watermark is just gone because of that full bleed.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something else just to note too. Like I said, I've got 1-inch border all the way around. I've seen some people will actually do on the bottom, they'll do like a 2-inch border on the bottom, and they do that so they can actually side the print.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives them a little bit of extra room.
I've done that before, but I don't print much, so I don't
Yeah.
do it much.
Yeah, I've never really signed anything myself. I'm not that important. But that's my basic setup. Basically, the only thing I do now is hit print and let it spit it out. So while I'm in here, does anybody ask any questions in the chat about this?
Yes, let me bring those up real quick. So, so Fabian said, how and where do you handle borders around photos? And this is one place you can handle it if you're printing it yourself. We can also talk about outside of that. Let's see, Steve said, use a Canon printer. Do you find darker shots are harder to get an accurate print for?
I do find, especially with color prints, that they tend to be sometimes a little bit darker. But my problem is when I actually edit, to the left side. So most of my photos are naturally darker. So therefore, it's exaggerated even more. But if I have a photo that's basically nice and straight in my histogram, it prints out pretty good. But what I will do sometimes, if I do notice it being an issue, is I usually find if I just up my exposure for the print by half a stop, then it's usually pretty close.
Okay. And a follow-up question that Steve had is, do you feel it's worth doing prints at home? Are you talking like one a week, or do you batch print? How do you feel about that in general?
I go through spells. I'll sometimes print out a bunch of stuff over the period of a week, and other times I might go a week or two without printing anything. Mm-hmm. So for me, there's no consistent print time. But with the higher-end printer, it's definitely not the kind of thing you should purchase if you're not going to print a lot, because every time you cycle the printer on and off, it purges the print heads and it goes through a lot of ink. I actually leave mine on so it doesn't do as much of a deep cycle. It basically just does a quick print head cleaning versus a full purging cycle when you turn it off and on.
Yeah, and Mike has a related question, which is, generally, is a color printer a wise purchase? I somehow think for me, printing service makes sense. And I think it really depends on the volume that you print. If you print a lot, then you can save money printing them at home yourself because your cost per print will be lower. But if you print infrequently...
And you're your own quality, too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I've had issues where I sent something out to a print shop and it didn't come out the way I wanted, and ended up having to pay to get it printed again.
Yeah, which is no good. But yeah, the generally speaking, the more you print, the more money you can save by getting a printer and printing them yourself. The less you print, in my opinion, you're better off using a print service. And okay. Let's see. So those were specific to what you were showing, Mark, those questions. We have some other questions, but I think we can just switch back to us for a minute and then do a little bit more demonstrating after we answer these questions. So one of those questions was, back to Fabian, how and where do you handle borders around photos, and how does this fit in with the size of the frames? And then also, do you sign your photos on the front or back? Any suggestions of pens to use? So yeah, there's a lot of questions, but that's okay. Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, I think with signing, I think most people just use a Sharpie, I think.
Yeah, I think that's going to give your best stay, because if you use the wrong kind of pen, the signature is going to smear and it's going to be no good. Mm-hmm. But I think Sharpie is a safe bet there. As far as borders around photos go, I'm actually going to switch over to my screen for a minute and show you how and why I use borders on my images. So we're back over here. Oh, Peter says a space pen. That's another good recommendation for signatures. That special space ink is good. So we're back over here on my image, and when you're talking about borders and the size of the frames, this is how I handle it. So we're back looking at this image again, and I'm going to go back into the resize dialog and reset the measurement to inches, and then I'm going to set my resolution to 300. So at 300, I have a 12-inch by 19-inch image. Whoops, that's wrong. I accidentally had resample checked. At 300, I have a 10-inch by 15-inch image, almost exactly. And for the sake of this particular thing, I'm not going to resize or change or resample anything. I'm just going to keep it like this. So let's say I want to frame this in a 16-inch by 20-inch frame, right? So number one, I'm going to need a mat because there are, as far as I know, there are no 10-inch by 15-inch frames out there, like anywhere. I've never seen one. So when I hit OK, my image doesn't visually change here, but I have rearranged those pixels to be 300 pixels per inch. Now, I want a 10-inch by 15-inch print, but let's go to Google Chrome here. And I'm just going to go to print from home, and we're going to just quickly jump over and take a look at their pricing so we can see their print sizes, right? And you'll notice that, ooh, I can get an actual 10 by 15. They must have added this. So they're supporting the 3:2 ratios, which are nice. I used to not be able to get exactly a 10-inch by 15-inch print. So this throws my little demonstration off here a little bit. Okay, so I don't know. Let's
just make something up.
Yeah, let's just make something up. Let's pick a size. Let's say, whatever. Let's just say that for the sake of,
say you want to print it on 13 by 19.
Yeah, let's say I wanted to print it on 13 by 19-inch paper for whatever reason, right? So if I wanted to print it, or let's say whatever, let's say 12 by 18 right here. That's fine. That'll work. Let's say I wanted to print it on 12 by 18-inch paper. What I would do is come in here. I'm not going to send this to iPrint from home just like this, because this is a 10-inch by 15-inch image. And they're gonna want to figure out, like, do you want to crop it to fit? Do you want to expand it to fit? Blah 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 blah. I want to know when I send the image, that's the image. So what I do is I go into the canvas option, canvas size option here on Photoshop, and you can get to that by going under image and canvas size, or using the keyboard shortcut Option Command or Control Alt C. And this brings up the canvas size. And what canvas size does is adds pixels to the image on the edges. So if I want this to print on 12-inch by 18-inch paper, I enter those dimensions in here. I'm going to set my canvas extension color to white, and I'm going to click OK. And what you'll see happen here is now I have these borders on my image. So when I send this, and if I was going to frame this in a 16-inch by 20-inch frame, I would not print the image exactly 10 inches by 15 inches, even though this fits perfectly. And the reason for that is I would need a mat. And if my image is 10 inches by 15 inches, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to cut the mat and then get the image, the print, into the mat nicely, because your edges are going to be pretty close. You're going to cut your mat in a little bit, but you're going to be dealing with like 1/8 of an inch overlap on the edge of your mat. So if I print this as a 12-inch by 18-inch, my mat's going to come in just slightly on the inside of the image, but I've got all of this extra border behind the mat that I can use to tape the thing down so that it stays in the mat where it's supposed to be. So what I would do then is save this image as a JPEG. I would export it, and then send that image with the borders to the print house so that it prints exactly the size I want with the borders I want, exactly the way I want it. So that's how I handle borders and fitting things into frames. Now, as far as, like, again, an 8 by 10 image in an 8 by 10 frame, you have one of two choices. You can either crop your image to fit in that 8 by 10 frame, or you can add borders like I did here and then mat it to fit inside that frame. So maybe, you know, instead of an 8 by 10, you print a 6 by 9 image, and then you put an 8 by 10 mat over that and put that in an 8 by 10 frame.
Yeah, I think having an edge like that and then using a mat, you can basically get a bigger frame. And like I said earlier, it looks like you actually have a double mat, which just makes it look that much better.
Right, right. Okay, Steve had a question too. Says every time I've used color management for the paper I'm using, it prints the color so far off. And then it says I've been doing manage by printer and it's almost right on. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. So I don't know, but I would say you probably aren't doing something wrong. You're just finding that in that particular situation, letting the printer handle it is the better thing to do. All of these things, unfortunately, have to be tested because every printer is a little different. Every computer is a little different. You calibrate your monitor, but you're in different situations. Your calibration is going to be a little different. Everything is going to be a little different. So everything that we're talking about having you do is a thing you should test and check your results and adjust until you get the results that you want to get. So in your case, Steve, your printer and letting your printer manage it is giving you the colors you want. Well, all that means is you're not doing anything wrong. You're just letting the printer do what it should do, and it's giving you the colors you want. And as long as all of that works, like there's nothing to worry about there. Yeah. It's sort of a if it ain't broke, don't fix situation.
I suppose another question would be too is are you using OEM ink or aftermarket ink too? Because that could make a difference.
Yeah, that's another thing that printer companies don't want you to do is use third-party inks. Yeah, that's where they're making their money.
And just sort of as a side note, in my opinion anyways, if you're selling a print, you should be using the genuine ink. If it's just something for yourself or you're giving away to a friend or something like that, then that's maybe a little bit different. You can just use the cheaper inks. But if it's something that you're selling that's going to be hanging on a wall, exposed to sunlight, you definitely want to be using the proper inks.
100% agree. 100% agree. Okay, so let me switch it back, and we'll answer these other questions. What time we got? 7:20. Okay, good. We got time. All right. So Sanjay had a question. Hello, Sanjay, by the way. What is the best economy photo printer? Mark, do you have an opinion on that? Granted, this is, from both of us, this is going to be opinion. So again, take a look at this.
I suppose the big question is, how much are you thinking of spending? Because it's not that uncommon, especially down in the U.S. Up here in Canada, not so much. But these higher-end Canons, they quite often have decent rebates, and you can actually get them fairly cheap if you keep your eye open. Like if you go on the Canon USA website, they'll usually have a pretty good list of what the current rebates are.
Excuse me. And I mean, I personally would say, okay, oh geez, 500. I mean, that's not a budget. You can get a Pro 10 or a Pro 100.
You can probably get a Pro 1 for that price.
Yeah. So I mean, Mark, you're using
maybe even the Pro 1000, which is the even larger format.
Okay. And you're using the Pro 10, which prints up to 13 by 19, right?
Yeah. Plus, it will also do if you have a roll, you can do longer for panoramic prints.
Right. So if your budget's $500, I would look at here's my experience. Even though I don't print, just general knowledge and from when I did print in the past, I've used both Canon and Epson printers, and if you stick with Canon and Epson,
you can't go wrong.
You basically can't go wrong. That's exactly what I was going to say. So
I think they each have their advantages and disadvantages. Like with the Epson, I don't think, unless they've changed on the newer models, I don't think the print heads are replaceable. So if they start to get clogged, and it could be more troublesome to get them unclogged and things working. Whereas with the Canon, the print head is built into the mechanism, and the whole mechanism can be changed out.
Okay, perfect. So like that's one example of a difference between the two. But yeah, if you go, so Jim just said Epson clogs up a lot, and that could be problematic with a non-changeable print head.
I think it's because they have the smaller, they're printing at 360, so there's a higher density, so
smaller dots probably.
Yeah.
So I would say Canon or Epson. I personally would lean towards Canon, but I know they both do a great job. If I was going to buy one, I'd probably buy the Pro 10 or the Pro, whichever one gives you the bigger size ability to print. You said the Pro.
I think it's the Pro 1000. I think
1000. Yeah, I don't know how big the Pro 100.
I think it goes to Pro 100, then the Pro 10, then the Pro 1, and they're all 13 by 19. And I think the Pro 1000 is the next size up.
Okay. Yeah,
if me right.
Yeah, I'm looking at and I'm seeing the Pro 100 is $368 on Amazon. So
how much? Sorry,
$368 on Amazon right now
for the Pro 1.
For the Pro 100.
Oh,
sorry.
The Pro 100. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I'd recommend. If you stick with Canon or Epson, you basically can't go wrong.
Yeah, I don't think any of the other manufacturers make larger format. Maybe HP, but I think they're more
industrial,
like industrial stuff. Yes.
Yeah. I don't like HP. A lot of labs will use the industrial HP printers, and they do a good job. But on the consumer level, I think HP printers are a garbage racket with their. Yeah, let's just not go down that road. Don't buy HP. That's my recommendation. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Noodle has a really excellent question. And after we take this, then I want to get into taking your image and making it larger for print. Because that's something that a lot of people have asked about in the past. And this also, Mr. Noodle's question also dovetails into a question that PTAX had, which is a good question here. A matte would have a different result than a gloss. Yes, absolutely. You want to go ahead with that, Mark?
Yeah, I was going to say that typically I think the general rule of thumb is with black and white, they're more suited for matte paper, and something that gets a little bit more colorful and more artsy is better on glossy paper. Myself, I think I mentioned I use like the luster paper, which is similar to the satin paper, and they're sort of in between, and that's kind of what I like, because it's not too shiny but not too dull. Like myself, I'm not a fan of glass or the gloss prints. I just find them too shiny and too reflective and hard to look at.
Yeah, I've done a couple on metal. They look really cool.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to look at your images
and suit it.
Yeah, and figure out which texture is best suited for your images. For some people, it'll be matte. I think for me, glossy is a good texture, or lack thereof, because of the type of stuff that I shoot.
Yeah, because you got lots of pop and colors and all your stuff.
Right. And I don't know that canvas would be great for me. But I'm actually going to try a couple on canvas just for grins, because I just picked up a deal on some from a local printer. So I figure why not, right? But yeah, and again, it's a thing that you should test, because, like if you're printing it yourself, it's pretty easy to test, because you can just run off a print on your matte and on your glossy paper and say, okay, yeah, I like, do a 4x6 or whatever, and say, okay, I like this one, I don't like this one, glossy is best for this. If you're ordering from a lab, again, order some 4x6s. Those are usually dirt cheap. We're talking like, under 50 cents a print usually. And you can decide which one you like. Like I said, I've done this in the past, and I lean towards a glossy finish on my images because of the type of work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Steve says, I like the Canon semi-gloss paper the best so far. That's good paper.
Yeah,
I've used that in the past.
Semi-gloss is similar to the luster and the satin.
Mm-hmm.
They're all similar.
This is an interesting question, and it's going to be one that's difficult to answer with any kind of definitiveness, because it's really going to be subjective. But Tom's wondering, business-wise, do we think a printer is a necessity? Do they pay for themselves over X amount of time? What do you think, Mark?
Necessity, I would say no. It's nice to have, don't get me wrong,
mm-hmm.
but if you don't do a lot of printing, then not necessarily. If you do a lot of printing, like if your clients are eating up your prints like crazy, then absolutely.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think it's necessary. If you got one and you did generate a lot of prints that you were selling to customers, it'll absolutely pay for itself over time.
Yeah.
Quite possibly a very short period of time if you're charging a good price for your prints. So that is entirely possible. But then you also have to consider the fact that if you are printing the prints, then you are printing the prints, which means that's additional work you have to do versus saying, okay, X number of...
them up in the lab and away you go, and just
exactly
sit at your door and wait for them.
Exactly, yeah. So
and watch us on YouTube while you're waiting.
right. And neither approach is wrong, of course, but that's just something to consider. The additional work that you will have to do in terms of color management, actually sitting down, prepping for and pressing the print button, checking the print, etc., etc. So nothing wrong with that, but something you'll have to think about doing. Okay, so let me switch over to my screen again here, and we're going to walk through enlarging an image and preparing it for printing it bigger than its native resolution. So we're back here to my screen, and the first thing I'm actually going to do is just go back to the original image. So I just went back in my history to when we opened it, so no image size changes, no canvas size changes. And let's say I want to print a nice big print. First things first, back in Lightroom, you're going to do all of your edits that you would normally do in Lightroom. And if you do anything in Photoshop, you would do all of your edits that you would do in Photoshop. So I've already done all of that kind of stuff. And we're taking a fully edited image here, and we're about to prepare it for printing. So I don't need to do like any other editing or anything like that. But because this is a copy of my image, if we go back into Lightroom, I just want you to see here, this is the original right here, and then this is the secondary copy I generated of this exact same image. And the reason I point that out is because I'm going to come over here, and you'll notice that I've got a whole bunch of layers over here from all of the editing that I did. I'm going to flatten this image down and eliminate all those layers because those are not necessary, and the printer does not want them. So I'm going to flatten the image down. Nothing changes, I just lose all of my layers, which is fine because I still have the original edited image with all the layers. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here into image size. And this is a pretty straightforward process. This is not complicated. It's just knowing what you want and the settings to choose in order to get to that point. So let's say I want to print my image 20 inches by 30 inches, like a nice big size print. Good night, Mr. Noodle. Nice big print. The first thing I'm going to do is set my resolution here to 300 and see where my native size is at. That's 10 by 15. What I'm about to do is double the size of my image. That's a pretty tall order. And so the first thing I'm going to do is actually decide I'm gonna back it down to 250. Whether or not you do this is entirely up to you as an individual. But like I said earlier, 300 is optimal. You can get away with a 250 DPI image on a print.
Especially if you're printing a little bit larger, like you're demonstrating here.
Because you're not going to be
right up.
Yeah, you're not going to be looking at it like this. Right? So that's all done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this resample box right here. When you resample your image, any changes you make here in these three entry fields, the width, the height, or the resolution, will result in adding or removing pixels from your image. And that's only when the resample box is checked. When it is unchecked, any changes you make here simply result in a rearranging of the density of those pixels in relationship to the resolution. But in resampling, you are adding or subtracting pixels. And let me show you what I mean. It's currently set to 250, and my dimensions are 3051 by 4576. Watch what happens when I take it down to 100. Look at what happened to my dimensions up here. I now have 1220 pixels by 1830. I have removed pixels from the image, and as a result, my image is significantly smaller. Now, I don't want that because I want to print bigger, not smaller. So I'm not going to undo it because I haven't actually committed to any changes anyway. What I'm going to do is go back to the resolution I wanted, which is 250. And now, in setting my resolution, I can now come up here and change the actual dimensions of the image, which is going to tell Photoshop I want to expand the dimensions of the image while maintaining this resolution. And in doing that, what that means is Photoshop is going to have to generate new pixels to fill in those gaps to maintain the 250 pixels per inch. Now you need to decide which version of resizing you want to use, and Photoshop has a few options with which you can do this. They have a brand new version called Preserve Details 2.0. This is supposed to be like the newest, bestest, greatest version. So we're just going to use that one today. Like everything else we've talked about, these are things that you will need to test to see which one works best for you in your image. It may be Preserve Details 2.0, may be Bicubic Smoother, may be Preserve Details. You're going to want to use one of the enlargement options, though. You're not going to want to use the Bicubic Sharper as an example because that is designed for making your image smaller. So we're going to go Preserve Details 2.0, and we are going to hit OK, right? This is very simple. Oh, we didn't change our size yet. So now let's go ahead and let's change this.
Real simple.
Yeah, let's change that from 20, and this is 29.997. It is close enough. I'm not going to change that to 30. And you'll see here that now my image is 5,000 pixels by 7,499 because Photoshop is preparing to add additional pixels into the image. Now I'm going to click OK, and when I do that, it's going to crunch, which it's crunching right now. And boom, my image jumped up on the screen because I have genuinely made the image larger. I have added pixels to the image. And if we take a zoom in here and look, you can see that this image is substantially larger. And if we look at the details, you can see there's a degradation of details here, right? So there,
but not horrendous.
It's not horrendous at all, right? And again, you have to consider the fact that people are not going to be looking at the image like this, right? They're not going to be sticking their face up to it and, oh my God, I can't count the eyelashes.
Are you sure they're not going to be?
This sucks, right?
Well, I'm doing that right now.
Right. I mean, we're zoomed in right now so that we can see. But like this, you know, how it's going to look on paper, again, this is the thing you would have to test. The very first time I made an enlargement this big, I went through this process, got the image looking as good as I could get it to look here, and then I ordered one print to see how it would look. And it looked great, I thought. So I'm like, you know what? This is great. I'm going to do it. And I did that from, I think they were 8 megapixel images. So now what I would do here, so okay, this needs a little bit of work. Like I'm not going to be able to recover a difference in eyelashes here, but let's just compare here. I'm going to go back to my original edit version right here, and I'm going to open this original in Photoshop so we can just compare them side by side at 100% to see what the difference is in detail and quality here. Now, this is 100% on the original image. And it's obviously smaller because the image is smaller, right? Like it is genuinely a smaller image. If I open up the image size dialog, we're back to 240, blah, 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 blah. And if we look at this, and compare it to the other one, you'll actually see this looks really great, right? Like it is bigger, and because it is bigger and because we're looking at it 100%, you might be thinking, oh, that looks bad, right? But if we look at this exact same image, it is of basically the same quality. It is not exactly the same, but like I couldn't count eyelashes in the first place here. She's wearing very thick, heavy false eyelashes, right? There is texture to her skin. There should be texture to her skin. She's a human being, right? And we have, you know, texture in the shape of, you know, noise and other characteristics here. So I would be prepared to continue with this and print this, right? So the next thing I'm going to do is...
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you take the original image and zoom it into the same
roughly size.
yeah,
Yes,
roughly same size. So like I can't see because of the stream coming through is
Right.
for me, but then everyone else could get an idea how different it is or is not.
yeah. Let me see if I can get it at about the same spot. Woo! That's way too.
That's yeah. Probably somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
So this is zoomed into 143%. This is enlarged for printing. So this is at 100% here, right? And this one looks softer and worse because I'm zooming and spreading out the pixels without adding any. This one, which is the one that I've added pixels to, looks better. Now, I wouldn't just print this just like this, right? I'm going to do a little bit more work. I don't actually have my sharpen action on this computer yet, but one of the things I would do is run a little sharpening over this. So let's just duplicate the layer, and we'll just do it old school, which is I'm going to open up filter and go to we'll just do it through the unsharp mask. Oh, let's try smart sharpen. Let's see how good this is. Oh, that looks like hell. God, that looks awful. Right? Like with smart sharpen, you can play around with this. No wonder it looks so bad. I'll take that down to like a half a pixel. This looks like hell. We are not going to use smart sharpen
ever again.
That looks like garbage. Let's pull up the unsharp mask and see what that does. Mount radius, I like about a half a pixel usually. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Now get a great shot with a D850. What's the mark on her cheek? That's just the way the light hit her cheek because of the way her hand was and the way the light was. So that's just light is all it is. All right, so let me just quickly, and regardless of the method you use, like what I would recommend you do is do an unsharp, some sort of sharpening on the image until you're happy with it. Like I'd probably pull this up to, I don't know, like 150 or something. I'm just messing around here. Okay, and you can see, like, if you look at the eyes and you look at the eyelashes and stuff, that crispens it up a little bit. So I would okay that, and then I would throw a layer mask on here, and I would just brush out like the important areas. So like the eyes and whatnot, in order to just sharpen the important areas, rather, because like I don't want to sharpen like the noise, and the detail on her face, because that just looks bad, right? So if I undo that, it looks a lot better. But that's the basic process that you would go through here. You're going to enlarge it to your desired size, make sure it looks okay, and do some sharpening, a little bit of touch-up work if you feel the need to, and then you would save that image and you would send it out for print. Now, one of the other things that you can do, which would seem counterintuitive, is add noise to your sharpened image, because the addition of noise can actually make the image appear to be sharper. So we're just going to, for grins, see if this helps this image or not. What I would do is you want to go with a Gaussian noise, and you want to go with a monochromatic noise. And obviously you can see at like 12.5%, that's a ridiculous amount. I'm going to take it way, way down to just like 1%. And I don't see any perceptual difference there. And these are all like, things that I've learned. Oh, you know why? I forgot to do the merge visible. There we go. Things that I learned in the past. I haven't done this a lot lately because, like I said earlier, I don't print much. But, okay, so here we are. That obviously looks awful with 12.5% noise. 1% doesn't look great. I'm just going to throw in 4% to see what that looks like. 4%'s bad. I'd maybe go with like 1% or something like that. That's a thing you can try. But the bottom line is you want to enlarge it using those settings that I talked about. You want to do a little bit of sharpening, maybe add a tiny bit of noise, and then you can print that baby out.
You can also
Whoops.
do upscaling within Lightroom too if you're just a Lightroom user.
Okay, you want to show them that, Mark?
I haven't done it in a while, but I'll see if I can figure it out.
Alrighty, let me switch it over to you. I'm trying to find my mouse pointer. I don't know where it went.
It's straight away again on you.
There we go. All right, let me switch it over to you so you can show them. All right, so yeah, that's the process that you'll go through for enlarging in Photoshop. And again, don't get so caught up in the details of it at 100% because that's not how you're going to look at it when it's printed. You're going to be looking at it at a distance so that you can enjoy the entirety of the photo. That's where it's important to see it.
Yeah, that's good. Just give me 1 second here. Oops, there's something I want to do. So just for fun, I'm going to export this one as is, just so we can see what the difference is.
Are you doing it through the export dialog?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically right now I just export it as is, just so we can see what the difference is in JPEG size.
Mm-hmm.
Because it always surprises me how much of a difference it actually makes. But, so let's just go. So if I go export and I just select the regular export, see if I can remember where to do this now. Down in file settings, I think it is. Okay, yeah. So to turn off the limit, keep it at 100%, longest edge, and then I'm just going to switch this to inches. Let's say, what did you do before? 20 by 30?
I did 20 by 30.
20, 12 times 20 is, how many inches is that?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
30 inches. Sorry.
How many pixels?
Mind. Yeah. Okay, no, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically just under image sizing, I just actually change it to 30 inches on the long side and export that. I'm going to use a unique name. And it'll do its thing. So basically, it'll just resize it as it's exporting it. It's not as sophisticated as Photoshop, but it seems to do a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, exporting it, and that gets to a question that, here we go, Steve had. Is it better to print straight from Lightroom or to do it this way through Photoshop and print a JPEG imported to Lightroom? Best quality comes from which one?
Okay, so
I don't know.
Export
Go
files,
ahead.
My export files, the original one without upsizing it was 15 meg, and the upsized one a little over 22 meg.
Okay, so it added about 7, 8 megs.
Yeah, so I think if you had like a smaller megapixel camera, then it would make it even bigger. It's like I got the 36 megapixels, so it's already fair size by default.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve was asking if it's better to print straight from Lightroom or to go through Photoshop and then print from a JPEG imported into Lightroom. Which way is the best quality? I personally would say if you are. I don't know because I've never tested this, but my feeling is if you are printing native size or smaller, then there's no reason to go to Photoshop unless you need specifically to do something to the image in Photoshop. As far as printing goes, if you're doing native size or smaller, I see no reason to not just go through Lightroom if you're printing it yourself.
I would agree.
But I feel if you are enlarging it, it's a better idea to go to Photoshop and enlarge it there. And then you could print it just out of Photoshop. You don't necessarily need to save it as a JPEG, import it into Lightroom, then do the printing out of Lightroom. Like Photoshop, you can print it right out of Photoshop. That'd be fine too.
I've never printed out in Photoshop, but I assume you can.
Yeah, you definitely can. Let me pop back over to Photoshop, and we'll just see what the print dialog looks like. I can't imagine it's super different from what Lightroom offers.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
So let's just go back into Photoshop. Let's edit in a copy again, and let's see what their print dialog looks like. Oh, it's 7:50 already. Holy smokes.
Time flies.
Yeah. Okay, reading. Here we go. So we go under File, we go under Print, and here we go. We have printer set up. So printer, I don't have one, so it doesn't know what the hell I'm doing. Here we have color handling. Printer manages. That's probably what I would do. Send 16-bit data is just going to send as much data as possible. And then here you have your positioning and size. So here it's scaling. You can scale it to fit media, which is just going to shrink it down so that it'll fit on whatever media you're choosing. You have those printing marks that Mark was talking about in Lightroom, or registration marks as well. Registration marks I don't see that you would ever need unless you're converting something to CMYK for printing on an offset press. Oh boy. Oh! Excuse me. Ooh, but yeah, all the printing marks are there if you wanted to choose them. Functions, I don't even know what's here. I haven't done this in a long time. Emulsion down or negative. Postscripts options. So you can absolutely print here out of Photoshop. I don't have all the options again because I don't have a printer installed here, so you're not going to see everything. But that's how I would go for it if you're enlarging a thing to print on your own printer. Okay, let's see here. Christopher Muhammad, heading to go. You just got home? Oh, it's no problem. You don't have to apologize. Steve says, I've always just exported it from Lightroom at original size, then print the JPEG, or just print straight from Lightroom print module from the raw file. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Here's the important thing, right? Like, if you are happy with the quality of your prints, you're not doing anything wrong. Don't change something because Mark or I do it differently, because just like everything else, yeah, there's about 5,000 different ways you can do all these things. This way I've showed you of resizing, that's one way you can resize. You can actually buy third-party plugins that are designed to resize.
For that, yeah.
Yeah, that are just for resizing images for printing that are, in theory better than Photoshop doing it. I don't know if they do or don't. I haven't used one in a very, very long time. So whatever they have now would be far different from what I have now, or what I had back then, I mean.
Yeah. Steve says he was really hard on himself, so he always thinks it could be better. I think as photographers, we're all like that.
Yeah, we all. I mean, no lie. Just as we were looking at this, my image enlarged to 20 by 30, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking like, yeah, like, God, like I was getting mad at myself for this. But then, when I look at this image and I really look at it, like, I just love this photo. So we got to remember to not be so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, and I'm bad at it, and Steve says his fiance tells him to stop, and my wife does the same thing for me.
Yep. Yeah. My wife's like, you need to do better. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
It's the nature of our beast.
It really is. So Christopher says he was out taking some damn photos. No better thing you could have been doing. Yeah, definitely a very, very good excuse. So I want to make sure we caught the other questions that came from Facebook. I don't know if Eric Thomas is here, but he wanted to know if we were talking about the Pro 10. We certainly have, because you use that. Mm-hmm. And we did kind of talk about this a little bit. PTAX was wondering about the metal prints. Oh, okay. Peggy had a question on what to buy, and we already caught that as well. Looking for excellent quality wireless, prefer 4x6 or 8x10. There's that print size again. Definitely, I'll probably just shoot her a message because we had kind of already talked about the printers that you could use too.
Right.
I think that's all the questions that we had from folks on Facebook.
I think for the most part we've covered all the important stuff anyways.
Yeah.
And of course anyone's always welcome to send either one of us a message.
Yeah. So do you guys have any other questions that you want us to answer, printing or otherwise? Let us know. This is close to your last chance to ask them tonight.
Going
anyway.
once, going twice.
Right. See, Paul says, thank you both. Finally going to start printing some of my photos and picked up some good tips. That's awesome. Glad we could help. Steve says, I think Mark needs a tagline. Mark, what's your tagline going to be?
I have no clue. That's like when I post an image online, I have a hell of a time even coming up with a title for it, let alone, like, I know you like to put these little blurbs and what have you. It's like,
yeah,
I can hardly even think of what to call the damn thing, let alone anything else.
Man, sometimes it takes me an hour to find the right quote. Like, no joke.
Yeah.
It can take a while. But it's worth it in the end too, because like when you find exactly the right quote to go with an image, that feels pretty good. You know what I mean? Yeah. All right, so we got 5 minutes. What do you got? Any other questions? Let us know in the chat. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap this up in about 5 minutes. I'm gonna go get my wife some ice cream because she wants some ice cream tonight. I might have a bowl.
No, Steve says you got an image in your messenger.
I got yeah. Sorry about that, Steve. Okay, so let me bring this up in Messenger here. Let me close this image here. Don't save. And Google. All right, let me switch the screen over so you guys can see what we got going on here.
Gary has a quick question too.
Okay.
He's saying when exporting from Lightroom to your desktop, what is a good size on the long side to export out with?
That's a good question, and it does depend on
the purpose of the image.
Purpose. Okay, so here's the shot that Steve was saying was hard to print. I can see why that's hard to print. There's a lot of dark.
Yeah, a lot of dark
in that image. But even in looking at this on my monitor, which is at full bore, it feels dark to me. Which, if that's the way you want it, like that's fine. But if I can absolutely see why this is something that you needed to brighten up significantly for a print.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
That definitely looks super dark.
Yeah, it's a great image, but it's definitely just dark in general, and so that's going to be something that you have to contend with. I can see that. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's see here. Gary says, when exporting, what is a good size long side to export with? All right. So, like Mark said, that does depend upon what you are doing.
But I suspect, though, because we're talking about printing, I'm assuming he wants to export to send to the printer.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then what you're going to want to do is export to the print size.
Right.
Which,
if you switch back to my screen, I actually have some pre-made...
Go for it. Yes, for printing, you said. Okay, yes. Steve says, maybe I'll start turning down my brightness. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so basically in my export, I actually have some custom-made ones. So I actually have one for like 4x6, 5x7. Actually, I sort of have... I have 4x6 and 6x4, just depending on the orientation of the image. 8x10s, 10x8. So these are my primary print ones that I normally do. So if we go into just my export dialog box, I can show you. We'll go with the crappy 8x10. And
our favorite aspect ratio.
Yeah, our favorite aspect ratio. And literally, it's the same thing as what I was showing before, except here I basically say resize it, height or width and height, and so I just have the 8 and the 10-inch there. You just have to make sure the image itself is cropped to that ratio first, then Lightroom.
Yes, that's the most important thing. Yeah,
so that's literally it. That and then the resolution of 300.
Yep. Yeah.
And if I go to like the 4x6, same thing. It's just 4 inches by 6 inches.
Yeah.
So as long as your image is cropped to the size you're exporting it at, then you should be fine.
Yeah, and like my approach, what I prefer to do is whatever I'm printing, like you can actually take an image that is larger and print it at a smaller print, right? So like you can
Yes,
take
absolutely.
your full size, you know, you could export a full size JPEG and then print that as a 4x6. And that's fine. But what I prefer, and I prefer this because I tend to order my prints rather than print them myself, I prefer to have the image be the exact size that I'm going to print, which is what Mark just demonstrated how to export out of Lightroom to do. Crop it and then use your export dialog to set the dimensions where you want. But again, like if you're printing it yourself at home using Lightroom, okay, he orders his prints. So yeah, then yes, absolutely do that process. Make sure it's the exact size. That's my recommendation, so that it is exactly the size that the printer needs to print the size you want.
Yeah, and like Spyros said, you could send a larger one to the printer, but well, in my case, I've got crappy internet here, and I'd rather send a 4x6 print, or sorry, a 4x6 image to be printed, because it'd be a heck of a lot smaller than the full size. I think that's the one that I exported. It was this picture. It was 15 meg.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I export this in 4x6, it'd probably be less than a meg.
Yeah, it'd probably be a megabyte. That'll upload lickety split.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should switch back so we can see you, Mark.
Oh, he wants to see.
All right. Thank you so much. It is 8 o'clock, which means we're going to wrap this bad boy up. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate it as usual. We love that you spend your time with us. We appreciate that you enjoy that, and we are happy that we're able to help you out and answer any questions you guys might have. So, Mark.
Peter had one last question. What's the thing over my left shoulder? A bag, a hat. And that's what it is. It's a bean bag and a hat. A prop.
Perfect. A beanbag with a hat. All right.
Yeah.
So thanks again, everybody. Mark, do you have any last words you want to share tonight?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Then make sure you like.
Print some damn photos.
Yeah, get out there and print some damn photos. All right, guys. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel and Mark's channel. If you haven't, just click his username in the chat and go over there and subscribe to his channel. And then.
That's appreciated, of course.
Yeah, it's always appreciated. But whether or not you do any of that, make sure you get out there like Christopher was tonight and take some damn photos.
Yeah.
All right. See you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.